It didn't come from Buckingham, it didn't come from the tabloids. This time, the blow comes from Parliament, and it threatens to erase Harry's royal identity forever. For years, Prince Harry's battles have been deeply personal, painful confrontations with his family, emotional reckonings with the press, and the crushing weight of royal expectation. But now, the battlefield has shifted. What once played out in interviews and documentaries has stormed its way into the very heart of British politics. The halls of Parliament are no longer observing from a distance. They're actively mobilizing. The House of Lords is not gossiping. They're drafting, debating, and deciding. This isn't about royal family drama anymore. It's about the credibility of the crown, and Harry is standing directly in the crosshairs. For some members of Parliament, the question isn't whether Harry's actions are scandalous. It's whether they are treasonous in spirit. His public remarks on the monarchy, the UK military, and even the constitution of another country have ignited fury not only among traditionalists, but across the political spectrum. To many, it feels like a betrayal cloaked in Californian luxury. The problem isn't just that Harry has criticized institutions, it's that he's done so while still carrying the very titles those institutions bestowed upon him. Titles that carry weight, power, prestige, and above all, responsibility. There's a growing belief among MPs that Harry is abusing those titles to live a double life, reaping the benefits of royal status without any of its burdens. 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Royalty when it's convenient, a private citizen when it's not. It's a line too fine, too dangerous, and far too public. The phrase, "you can't have it both ways," has transformed from a media headline into a rallying cry inside Parliament. Behind closed doors, legal minds are discussing not just stripping Harry of the His Royal Highness styling, but revoking the Duke of Sussex title itself, a gift from Queen Elizabeth on his wedding day, now under threat from the very government that once honored it. And make no mistake, this isn't performative politics. Proposals have been drafted. Pathways have been explored. The Titles Deprivation Act, a law not dusted off in over a century, has re-entered national conversation. This move isn't fueled by emotion or personal vendettas. It's being framed as a necessary step to preserve institutional integrity. If the monarchy is to mean anything in the modern era, say the critics, it cannot afford to be mocked, contradicted, or commercialized by its own blood, especially by one who has chosen to step away from duty but refuses to relinquish the symbols of it. But what pushed politicians to act so decisively? The answer lies in a media storm Harry himself helped ignite. It began as a quiet retreat, but what followed was a media juggernaut, and the monarchy was squarely in its crosshairs. When Prince Harry and Meghan Markle made their announcement in January 2020, the world paused. It was unprecedented. A senior royal couple voluntarily stepping back from their official roles, signaling a break from centuries of tradition. The tone was respectful. The intentions appeared clear. They were seeking independence, privacy, and peace. It was framed as a modern couple choosing love and freedom over duty and spotlight. For a moment, the public sighed with empathy. The pressure of royal life, the press intrusion, the weight of centuries, it all seemed too much. Who could blame them for walking away? But that's not what happened. Instead of retreating quietly, the couple began unveiling a carefully crafted narrative that would redefine their image and shake the royal family to its core. First came the Oprah Winfrey interview in 2021, a moment that would ignite a global firestorm. Meghan, seated across from one of the most influential voices in media, revealed a string of allegations so explosive they eclipsed anything the palace had faced in decades. Claims of racism, discussions about her unborn child's skin tone, being denied mental health support, and the royal family's icy silence. Each word struck a nerve not just with the institution, but with millions watching. Harry joined in, speaking, not as a prince, but as a wounded son and husband. For many, it was powerful, brave, revolutionary. But for others, it felt like betrayal. The monarchy, known for its silence and discretion, was suddenly being dissected on primetime television by one of its own. Then came the Netflix documentary, Harry and Meghan, a 6-episode chronicle of their journey, pain, and grievances. But this time, something had shifted. Viewers who once sympathized with their struggle began to question the motives. The series leaned heavily into a curated perspective, weaving private footage, emotional diary-style commentary, and a narrative that cast them as victims of an unfeeling, outdated system. To some, it was honest storytelling. To others, it felt like calculated image control, a high-budget rebranding exercise wrapped in royal melodrama. The documentary didn't just spotlight their struggles. It indicted the institution, the press, and even specific family members. But with every new revelation, the line between authenticity and manipulation blurred, and slowly, the tide of public opinion began to turn. What had once been viewed as a noble quest for freedom was now being seen by many as exploitation. Instead of moving on from the monarchy, Harry and Meghan seemed to be profiting from it. Interviews, documentaries, speeches, and deals all tied, directly or subtly, to their royal past. Every camera pointed at them seemed to carry the faint echo of Buckingham Palace, and the very titles they claimed had caused so much pain were being used to open doors in Hollywood, boardrooms, and publishing houses. The cracks in public patience began to widen. It was no longer just about stepping away. It was about what came next, about what they chose to do with the attention. And the more they spoke, the more carefully constructed their appearances became, the more questions arose. Were they truth-tellers or architects of their own mythology? Was this liberation or commodification of royalty? And just as the dust began to settle, Harry opened the door to even more backlash with the stroke of a pen. Private family feuds, drugs, casualties of war. What was meant to be personal became political overnight. When Prince Harry released his memoir, Spare, he claimed it was a way to tell his truth. But what spilled out across the pages didn't just rattle Buckingham Palace, it sent shockwaves through the very foundations of British public life. It was raw, unfiltered, and explosive. And for many, it crossed an invisible line. This wasn't just a confession, it was a weapon, lobbed straight at the heart of the monarchy. The memoir tore open wounds the public had only guessed at. Harry revealed intense arguments with his brother William, one so physical that he claimed William knocked him to the ground. He spoke about losing his virginity behind a pub. He confessed to past drug use. Each chapter peeled away the layers of a carefully curated royal image and exposed a deeply wounded, deeply angry man. But while the personal details raised eyebrows, it was a particular revelation that ignited a firestorm of condemnation. Harry admitted to killing 25 Taliban fighters during his military service in Afghanistan. He described the killings in clinical terms, saying he saw them not as people, but as chess pieces. For a prince who had once been hailed as a heroic veteran, that single admission shattered decades of respect. The reaction from military veterans and armed forces officials was swift and fierce. Some called it disgraceful. Others feared it could endanger lives, including Harry's own, by painting a target on his back. But the most painful criticism came from those who had once stood with him, shoulder to shoulder, in uniform men and women who felt he had betrayed the unspoken code of service and brotherhood. What was once seen as courage now looked like recklessness. Instead of honoring the sanctity of his role, critics argued, Harry had used his military service as a headline grabber. His words weren't just shocking, they were branded self-serving, unnecessary, and deeply damaging. Public sentiment, already strained by the Oprah interview and the Netflix series, began to fracture. The very people who once defended him as a misunderstood outsider now questioned his motives. Had Harry gone from victim to opportunist? The media fed the fury. Headlines labeled him everything from too honest to dangerous. Politicians, journalists, veterans, and ordinary citizens all weighed in. The conversation was no longer about royal trauma or tabloid cruelty, it was about accountability. About whether a man who carried such titles should ever have revealed such things. About whether he still deserved those titles at all. What began as an emotional catharsis turned into a public reckoning. Spare was not just a book, it was a declaration, a scorched earth manifesto that torched any remaining illusion of reconciliation. And while some admired the bravery, many more saw it as a breach too great to ignore. Trust in Harry, already fragile, had been broken, and the cracks spread fast. But if the memoir cracked public patience, the next moment shattered it completely. He said he missed his country. But to many, it sounded like a prince talking down to the kingdom he left behind. In the aftermath of I Spare, with public trust already shaken and critics circling, Prince Harry stepped in front of the camera once more, this time for a BBC interview. Perhaps he believed it would offer clarity. Perhaps he thought a softer tone would humanize him again. But what unfolded on screen didn't heal anything. It detonated what was left of public patience. With the monarchy watching silently and Parliament on edge, Harry's words did not calm the storm, they stoked the fire. In the interview, Harry lamented his inability to bring his children to the United Kingdom. He spoke of longing, of heritage, of wanting to show them his homeland. But then came the sentence that echoed across the country like a slap. "I'd love to bring my kids over, but it's just not safe here." That line became an instant headline, but not in the way Harry may have intended. It didn't inspire sympathy. It enraged a nation. People weren't buying it, not anymore. How could a man who had chosen to abandon royal duty, who now lived in a multi-million-dollar estate in Montecito, surrounded by private security, claim he wasn't safe in the very country that gave him everything? How could a former working royal, who had publicly distanced himself from the monarchy, now imply that the British state owed him protection? The reaction was swift, brutal, and widespread. Social media lit up with fury. Commentators across the political spectrum called the remarks tone-deaf and self-important. Military veterans, taxpayers, and even former royal correspondents slammed the idea that the UK, a country dealing with real threats and real security challenges, should pay to protect someone who had actively turned his back on it. But the damage went deeper than bad optics. To many, Harry's comments confirmed their worst suspicions that he still expected the privileges of the crown without fulfilling any of its responsibilities. The demand for taxpayer-funded protection, despite his full departure from royal duties, felt like the final straw. In the eyes of many, this wasn't a plea for safety. It was entitlement, dressed in royal nostalgia. And for members of Parliament already uneasy about Harry's growing distance from duty, the interview became a rallying cry. The murmurs of discontent began to sharpen into action. Politicians who had hesitated to involve themselves in royal affairs now found a new justification. This wasn't about family drama anymore. It was about public trust, taxpayer money, and the integrity of British institutions. The interview had given them a moral and political opening, and they seized it. What had once been a cultural conversation was now a legislative matter. And those voices did more than talk. They reached for a law with century-old teeth. A law, forged in the fires of war, now threatens to bring down a modern prince. It dates back more than a century, an old statute written during one of the darkest chapters of Britain's history. The Titles Deprivation Act of 1917. A legal relic from World War I, created to strip royal titles from those who had betrayed their country by siding with the enemy. At the time, it was used against British royals who had aligned themselves with the German Empire. The law wasn't symbolic, it was surgical. It severed titles, cut ties, and made it clear that the monarchy's grace was not unconditional. And now, more than 100 years later, that same law is echoing through the halls of Parliament, with Prince Harry's name attached to it. For many, it seemed like something that couldn't happen. A British prince, born of royal blood, descended from monarchs, now being targeted with the same legal instrument once used against wartime traitors. But the sentiment inside Westminster had shifted. The debate was no longer confined to angry headlines or social media rants. It had entered official records, government briefings, legislative strategy meetings. And with each day, the idea gained traction. Harry's critics weren't simply seeking public accountability, they were reaching for a law that could erase his titles forever. The Duke of Sussex, a title gifted to Harry by Queen Elizabeth II on his wedding day, now hanging by a thread. The symbolic weight of using the Titles Deprivation Act is impossible to ignore. It signals more than punishment. It redefines how far a royal can go before the crown itself disowns him. Parliament wasn't treating this as a PR issue or a palace squabble. They were framing it as a matter of state integrity. If Harry's words and actions were damaging the monarchy, then removing his title was not revenge, it was preservation. What made this even more striking was the growing chorus of bipartisan support. This wasn't just a conservative grudge or a royalist knee-jerk reaction. Members of Parliament from opposing parties began echoing the same conclusion. Harry had crossed a line, and the system had to respond. It wasn't about silencing him. It was about separating the man from the monarchy he no longer represented. His criticisms of British institutions, his disclosures about military service, and his perceived exploitation of royal status, all of it painted a picture of someone operating outside the values the Crown claims to uphold. This wasn't just about a name or a title. It was about the weight that name carried, about the influence and legitimacy it lent to every deal, every interview, every appearance. And if that title remained, so too did the illusion that Harry still operated under the Crown's silent approval. The machinery was in motion. Legal advisors combed the language of the act. Debates intensified. And though no vote had yet taken place, the momentum was undeniable. What once felt unthinkable had become entirely plausible. And just as Parliament turned up the heat, accusations swirled again, this time at Meghan. She lost the HRH title, but did she ever stop using it? The signs say otherwise. When Prince Harry and Meghan Markle stepped away from royal duties, the agreement with Queen Elizabeth was crystal clear: they would retain their titles. But the styling of His and Her Royal Highness could no longer be used in any official or commercial capacity. It was a symbolic boundary meant to separate the couple from the formal apparatus of the monarchy, while still respecting their lineage. But symbols matter. And in royal circles, crossing that line even subtly isn't just frowned upon. It's a declaration. From the outside, it looked like Meghan understood the deal. She launched projects under her own name, built her image independently, and carved out a niche in the Hollywood meets humanitarian world. But then came the whispers. Reports surfaced that baskets sent out to promote her podcast Archetypes contained branding that subtly referenced her former HRH status. Nothing confirmed, nothing explicit, but enough to raise alarm bells inside the palace. Then there were the business cards, circulating quietly, allegedly spotted at industry events, some bearing the styling HRH, the Duchess of Sussex. Again, never officially verified. But in the royal sphere, perception often hits harder than proof. Whether intentional or not, the implication was that Meghan hadn't entirely let go of the crown or the power that came with it. And in a post-Spare, post-Netflix era, that implication landed like a punch. Critics pounced. To them, this wasn't a misunderstanding. It was marketing, a deliberate decision to hold on to the prestige of royalty while claiming independence from it. And the message was clear. While the royal institution demanded separation, the Sussexes still knew where the power was. Titles opened doors. Titles booked speaking gigs. Titles sealed multi-million-dollar deals. And even when the couple insisted they were forging a new path, those same titles followed them onto every red carpet and into every boardroom. To defenders of the monarchy, this wasn't just inappropriate, it was dangerous. It blurred the line between royal duty and personal branding, tradition and commerce. If Meghan was leveraging her connection to the crown while defying its structure, what message did that send to the public? What did it say about the sanctity of royal titles if they could be used as accessories in the world of celebrity culture? The allegations, though murky, added new fuel to an already raging fire. For those arguing in Parliament that Harry should lose his Duke of Sussex title, Meghan's rumored behavior became part of the case. If one partner was misusing royal styling and the other held a hereditary title that enabled it, then wasn't the entire arrangement flawed from the start? The notion that Harry and Meghan were profiting off the crown while trashing it no longer felt like tabloid noise. It was now part of legislative discussion. And still, the palace said nothing. No statements, no denials, no clarifications, just silence. But the royal family's silence has been louder than any speech, and that silence is telling. They haven't spoken publicly, but behind palace doors, the message is crystal clear. For months, the royal family maintained a strict silence. No press briefings, no rebuttals, no royal waves or raised eyebrows. Just silence. But in the world of royalty, what's unsaid often carries the most weight. And behind that wall of formality, inside the ancient corridors of power, both King Charles and Prince William were watching closely. And according to multiple insider reports, They were done pretending everything was fine. Prince William, once Harry's closest confidant, has reportedly made his stance unmistakably clear in private. He believes his brother's actions, his interviews, his memoir, his ongoing commentary are tearing at the very fabric of the institution they were both born into. For William, this isn't about ego or jealousy. It's about legacy, about the future of the monarchy, which he is poised to inherit. And in that future, there seems to be little room for a renegade duke who trades royal duty for Netflix deals and tells the world how broken the system truly is. Insiders say William has communicated to aides and close advisors that Harry's titles must be addressed, that they are now a liability, not an honor. And while he won't say it in front of a camera, he doesn't have to. Those close to the throne are speaking for him, and their tone leaves no ambiguity. In the eyes of the heir, Harry has gone too far, and the monarchy cannot afford to ignore it. Then there's King Charles. Often seen as a modernizer with a steady hand, Charles has spent years preparing to streamline the monarchy, trimming down roles, cutting costs, and reshaping the royal brand for a changing world. In that vision, titles are earned, not inherited without purpose. His silence on the Harry issue isn't indifference. It's strategic. He understands that taking public action against his own son would be explosive. But quietly, methodically, he is laying the groundwork for a monarchy that looks very different from the one he grew up in. One where there's no room for non-working royals to keep royal labels for profit or prestige. Sources close to the palace suggest that Charles is not blocking the political movement to strip Harry's title. In fact, they say, he's allowing it to play out on purpose. It's not a royal decree, it's a parliamentary action. And by keeping his hands clean, Charles avoids public scrutiny while still ensuring the monarchy emerges stronger. It's classic royal maneuvering. Keep calm on the surface, but beneath it all, the current moves with purpose. And yet, this is no longer just about a father and son, or a pair of brothers who took different roads. It's about what the monarchy stands for and what happens when its symbols are used against it. The titles, the prestige, the very notion of being royal, all of it now hangs in the balance. Yet even beyond tradition and family, the battle over titles strikes at something more fragile, the power of perception. Strip away the titles, and what's left? The palace gates close, and the world sees just another celebrity couple. For years, the titles did more than decorate Harry and Meghan's names, they gave them currency. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex wasn't just royal styling. It was a brand, a powerful, lucrative, and globally recognized seal of royalty that followed them into every deal, partnership, and headline. But now, with Parliament sharpening its blade and public frustration boiling over, that brand stands on the edge of collapse. And if the titles go, everything they've built in the shadow of the crown could unravel with it. The petition to strip Prince Harry of his remaining royal titles didn't just make noise, it made history. Gaining rapid traction across the political aisle and surging in public support, it shattered the illusion that Harry and Meghan could indefinitely ride the line between monarchy and modern fame. Millions have signed, demanding accountability. And every signature sends a clear message. The public no longer sees royalty as a lifestyle, it sees it as a responsibility. One that, in their eyes, Harry walked away from. And without that royal glue holding it all together, the cracks in their empire have started to show. The end of the Spotify deal was the first major blow. Despite the fanfare, the partnership fell apart with minimal output and waning interest. Then came the Archwell project's grand envision, but failing to generate the kind of cultural buzz they once effortlessly commanded. The world that once leaned in to hear their side of the story now seems to be leaning away. In Hollywood, relevance is currency. But that relevance has always come at a premium, and for the Sussexes, that premium was royalty. Without the titles, without the mystique of being senior royals who dared to break free, their image risks becoming ordinary. There's no shortage of celebrities with memoirs, podcasts, production deals, and political opinions. What made Harry and Meghan different wasn't just their story, it was their status. A status now under siege. Their critics say it plainly. The titles gave them weight. Strip those away, and suddenly, the allure dims. Media interest has cooled. Public opinion polls show fatigue, and brands, those ever-watchful juggernauts of influence, are beginning to calculate risk over reward. In a world that moves on fast, the crown was their anchor. Now, that anchor may be slipping. Behind the headlines and hashtags, there's a deeper truth at play. The debate over titles isn't just legal or royal, it's existential. It's about how much of your identity you can retain after walking away from the institution that created it. For Harry and Meghan, it's about whether the world still sees them as forces of change, or simply as former royals fading into celebrity static. Justice or royal revenge? A family feud turned constitutional crisis. The next move could rewrite royal history, and the final chapter has yet to be written. Drop your thoughts in the comments section, and don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next one.